The night did not begin in silence. It began with noise, lights, and movement that never seemed to stop. Outside, people waited for hours, pressing close together, hoping to catch even one small moment. Inside, the air felt heavy, not because of the crowd, but because of how tired everyone was. The band had been awake for too long. Their smiles still showed, but they did not reach the same places they once did. They had started as ordinary young people with big dreams. Music was joy back then. It felt light. It felt free. Now, music came with schedules, cameras, and endless demands. Everywhere they went, someone wanted something from them. A song, a smile, a wave. Even when they sat down, the noise followed them. This film project was supposed to be fun. That was what everyone said. A chance to show their playful side. A chance to laugh, sing, and let the world see who they really were. But the truth was quieter and heavier. This was another long stretch of work added to days that already felt too long. As the cameras rolled, they joked with each other. Small laughs filled the room. From the outside, it looked easy, but inside, each of them carried their own tired thoughts. One felt pressure to always be clever. Another worried about making mistakes. One wondered how long this life could last. Another simply wanted one full night of sleep without being called again. The crew moved quickly. Lights were adjusted. Voices called out instructions. Someone counted down. The band stood ready, guitars in hand, feet planted, faces forward. Music started, and for a moment, everything felt right again. The rhythm pulled them together. The tired thoughts faded. Only sound existed. But when the music stopped, the weight returned. They sat apart during breaks. Not because they were angry, but because silence felt easier than talking. Sweat clung to their clothes. Their heads buzzed from sound and lack of rest. Someone stared at the floor, tracing invisible lines. Someone else leaned back, eyes closed, breathing slow, hoping no one would speak. Outside the room, people shouted their name again and again. It echoed through walls, through doors, through minds. The love was real, but so was the pressure. Every cheer came with expectation. Every scream meant they could not slow down. As the hours passed, small moments of tension appeared. A look held for too long. A joke that landed wrong. A sigh that said more than words. No one argued loudly. There was no big fight. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of strain that grows slowly. Like a crack you only notice when it becomes too wide to ignore. One member stood near a window at one point. The glass was cool against his hand. Outside, lights blurred together. People moved like shadows. He remembered days when he could walk freely, when no one watched his steps. Back then, being seen felt like a dream. Now, being unseen felt like one. Another sat nearby, tuning his instrument again and again, even though it was already perfect. His fingers moved out of habit, not need. His thoughts drifted to home, to simple meals, to quiet mornings, to places where time did not rush him forward. The third tried to keep energy high. He cracked jokes, teased the others, laughed a little louder than necessary. It was not fake, but it was effort. He believed that if he stopped, everything might fall apart. So he kept going, even when his chest felt tight. The fourth listened more than he spoke. He watched the others closely. He noticed the tired eyes, the slower movements. He felt the same weight, but held it differently. He wondered if anyone else felt the same fear, the fear that one day, the music would not be enough to hold them together. The director asked for another take, then another. Each one needed focus. Each one demanded energy they barely had left. Still, they gave it. Not because they were told to, but because they cared. The music mattered. Their bond mattered. Even when they felt drained, they did not want to disappoint each other. Between scenes, a quiet moment appeared. No cameras. No instructions. Just for people sitting together again. Someone shared a small memory from earlier days. A cheap room, a broken speaker, laughter that came from nothing more than being young and hopeful. The mood softened. Smiles returned, this time slower and more honest. They remembered why they started. Not for crowds, not for fame, but for the feeling music gave them when nothing else made sense. But the calm did not last long. A knock on the door, a reminder of time, another schedule waiting, another place to be. The night stretched on, refusing to end. Fatigue crept deeper. Muscles ached. Heads pounded. Still, the work continued. One scene required them to act carefree, to run, to laugh, to move as if nothing weighed them down. They did it, again and again. Each take looked joyful. Each cut hid the effort behind it. No one watching would ever know how heavy their steps felt by the end. As the night grew darker, doubts grew louder. One wondered if people loved the music or the image. Another questioned if they were losing themselves. One feared becoming a version of himself he did not recognize. Another feared losing the people sitting right beside him. Yet, in the middle of that doubt, something stronger stayed. Trust. Even when tired, they trusted each other. Even when unsure, they stayed together. No one walked away. No one gave up. The cameras captured more than planned. They caught quiet glances. They caught sighs. They caught moments when someone helped another without words. A hand on a shoulder, a shared smile after a hard take. These moments were small, but they were real. Outside, the crowd did not sleep. Inside, the band felt like they had already lived several days in one night. Time lost meaning. Only movement mattered. Only finishing mattered. Near the end of the session, one of them missed a note. It was small, barely noticeable, but he froze. Frustration flashed across his face. For a second, the fear of failure filled the room. Then someone laughed softly, not to mock, but to ease the moment. The tension broke. They tried again. This time, it worked. That moment said more than any perfect take ever could. The night had taken a lot from them. Energy, comfort, peace. But it had also shown them something important. Even under pressure, even when tired, they were still human, still connected, still trying. As dawn moved closer, the work slowed. Voices softened. Movements became careful. The hardest part was not the noise or the work. It was the waiting, waiting for rest, waiting for quiet, waiting for this long night to finally let go. They packed up slowly. Instruments were placed down gently, like fragile things. Coats were pulled on. No one rushed. Everyone felt the weight of what they had just lived through. Before leaving, they stood together for a moment. No cameras, no audience, just them. No words were needed. The silence said enough. They had made it through another hard stretch, not alone, but together. Outside, the sky began to change. The darkness started to fade, but inside, questions remained. Could they keep living like this? Could they protect what mattered, while the world kept pulling at them? They walked forward anyway. The night was not over yet. It was only pausing, and somewhere deep inside, each of them felt it. This journey was testing them, not to break them, but to reveal who they truly were. The answers would not come tonight. They would come later, after the music, after the noise, after the hardest days were faced. For now, all they could do was keep going. Morning did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, like it was unsure whether it was welcome. The sky outside changed color, little by little, from deep dark to soft gray. Inside, the long night still clung to everyone. Bodies were tired, minds were slow, and hearts felt full in a strange, heavy way. They moved through the space quietly now. No jokes, no loud laughter. Just calm steps and gentle voices. The noise that once filled the room had faded, leaving behind a soft hum. like the echo of something important that had just happened. Each of them felt different, yet the same. I sat alone for a moment, holding his instrument close, not playing it, just feeling its weight. He thought about how many nights like this he had already lived, how many more might still come. Fame had promised excitement, but it never mentioned how lonely it could feel when the lights went off. Another leaned against a wall, eyes half closed. His body ached, but his mind was awake. He thought about how fast life had changed. One day, he was dreaming. The next, he was running to keep up. He wondered if slowing down meant failing, or if slowing down meant saving himself. The third looked around the room, noticing small details he had ignored before. A chair pushed slightly out of place, a cup left behind, a mark on the floor where someone had stood for hours. These quiet signs felt more real than applause. They reminded him that real people made this work, not machines, not images. The fourth stood near the door, watching the others. He felt a deep sense of care that was hard to explain. These people beside him were not just partners in music. They were witnesses to each other's growth, fear, and hope. They had seen each other at their best and their weakest. As they prepared to leave, someone spoke softly. Just a few words. Nothing deep, but the sound of a voice after so much silence felt important. It reminded them they were still here, still together. Outside, the world looked different in daylight. Less dramatic, more honest. The crowd from the night before was gone. Streets were calmer. The noise had moved on, leaving space behind. They stepped into that space slowly. For the first time in a long while, no one was calling their name. No one was asking for anything. The quiet felt strange, almost uncomfortable, but also healing. They walked together, not rushing. No cameras followed, no schedule pulled at them, just a few minutes of being themselves. Each step felt like a release of something they had been holding inside. One of them laughed suddenly, not loudly, just a short, tired laugh. The others smiled. That small sound carried relief. It said, "We made it through." It said, "We are still us." Later, when they finally rested, sleep did not come easily. Thoughts moved too fast. Images from the night replayed again and again. The missed note, the shared glance, the moment of fear, the moment of trust. But rest came eventually. When they woke again, it felt like stepping into a new chapter. Not because everything had changed, but because something inside had shifted. The long night had shown them truths they could no longer ignore. They gathered once more, this time with clearer minds. The work was not fully done, but the hardest part was behind them. The pressure was still there, but it felt lighter now. Shared struggle had done something powerful. It had reminded them they were not alone in carrying it. They talked more openly than before, not long speeches, just honest words. One admitted he was scared of losing himself. Another said he felt tired all the time, but did not know how to stop. One said he feared letting the others down. Another said he feared not being honest enough. No one judged. No one rushed to fix anything. They just listened. That listening mattered more than advice ever could. As they returned to the music, something felt different. The notes carried more meaning. The rhythm felt closer to their hearts. They were not just playing for the world anymore. They were playing for each other. Mistakes still happened. Fatigue still showed. But patience had grown. When someone slipped, another waited. When energy dropped, someone else lifted it. The balance was not perfect, but it was real. They realized something important in those moments. The hardest days were not the enemy. They were teachers. They showed where limits were. They revealed what truly mattered. The film they were creating began to feel less like a task and more like a mirror. It reflected their joy, yes, but also their struggle. It showed movement, but also pause. It showed laughter, but also quiet strength. They understood then that people watching would only see part of the story. The fun, the music, the charm, but the real story lived underneath, in the tired eyes, in the long nights, in the choice to keep going together. As the final scenes came together, there was a sense of closure, not an ending, but a resting point, a breath between long stretches. They knew more challenges would come, more nights like the one they had just survived, but now, they carried proof that they could face them. One evening, as the sun lowered again, they stood in a familiar space. This time, it felt different, lighter, not because the work was easy, but because they had learned how to hold it better. Someone looked around and said quietly that this journey was changing them, not just as artists, but as people. The others nodded. Change was no longer something to fear. It was already happening. They had learned that growth did not always feel good. Sometimes it hurt. Sometimes it exhausted. But it also deepened bonds and sharpened purpose. The music played once more. Not for perfection. Not for approval. Just because it felt right. And in that moment, they remembered the feeling from the very beginning. The simple joy of sound. The shared beat. The connection without words. When the last note faded, no one rushed to speak. Silence filled the room again, but this time it felt warm, like a quiet promise. They packed up slowly, with care. Each movement felt thoughtful, as if they knew this moment mattered, even if no one else would ever see it. Before parting ways, they stood close together. Someone placed a hand on another's shoulder. Someone smiled softly. No big speech, no dramatic ending, just presence. They walked away in different directions, but the connection stayed. It always would. This was not the end of their story. It was a reminder that behind every bright moment is effort, behind every smile is a struggle, and behind every lasting bond is the choice to stay, even when it gets hard. The hard night had passed. Morning had come, and with it, a deeper understanding of who they were and what they shared. They were still learning, still growing, still human, and that was enough.